Chapter 1. Civilization Buried in Silence. Opening Atmosphere and Discovery. Take a slow breath. Imagine the early morning sun rising over a wide, quiet plain. The air's cool. A soft mist hangs low to the ground, and beneath that pale sky sit rows of old bricks, sun-baked, reddish, and still holding their shape after thousands of years. This is Mohenjo-daro. The name means Mound of the Dead, which, yes, sounds dramatic. But in the soft morning light, it does not feel scary. It feels quiet, peaceful, almost shy. The streets are straight. The bricks are neat. Some walls still stand waist-high like they are waiting for someone to come home. But no one comes, because the people who built this place lived here 4,000 years ago, long before Rome, long before medieval castles, even before many of the stories we think of as ancient history. This city belonged to what we now call the Indus Valley Civilization. It was as old as ancient Egypt, as old as Mesopotamia, while pyramids were rising near the Nile, and cities were forming between the Tigris and Euphrates. People here were also building something remarkable, and yet for thousands of years the world forgot them. Not partly forgot, completely forgot. There were no famous kings carved into giant statues, no epic war stories written in stone, no towering temples reaching toward the sky, just bricks. Lots and lots of bricks. For a very long time, these bricks lay buried under earth and dust in what is now modern Pakistan and northwest India. Villagers lived nearby. Fields grew. Rivers shifted their course. Time moved quietly forward. Then, in the 1800s, something interesting happened. Railway workers were building tracks across the region during British rule. They needed strong bricks, and they noticed something strange. In certain mounds near a village called Harappa, there were thousands of ready-made bricks just lying around. Old bricks, very old. So they did what any practical builders might do. They reused them. Yes, for a short time, ancient city bricks became railway material. Not the most respectful moment in archaeology history, but no one yet knew what they were dealing with. Eventually, scholars began to take a closer look. These bricks were not random. They were uniform, carefully shaped, baked at high heat, all almost exactly the same size. That kind of standardization is not an accident. In the early 1920s, archaeologists began proper excavations at Harappa. As they dug deeper, walls appeared, streets, wells, drainage systems. This was not a village. It was a city, a planned city. Soon after, another major site was uncovered further south, Mohenjo-daro, and what they found there made historians sit up very straight in their chairs. This was not a small civilization. It covered a huge area, stretching across parts of modern Pakistan and northwest India, along the Indus River and its tributaries, from mountains to coast. It flourished roughly between 2600 and 1900 BCE. That is more than 4,000 years ago. At its peak, it may have been home to millions of people across many cities and towns. And here is where things get even more interesting. When archaeologists uncovered cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, they expected certain things. Ancient civilizations usually leave behind very clear signs of power. Huge palaces, grand temples, statues of rulers with impressive beards, long inscriptions praising mighty kings. But in the Indus Valley, those signs were missing. There was no obvious palace towering above the rest of the city, no massive royal tomb filled with gold, no carved image that says, "I am King so-and-so, ruler of everything." It was strange. Very strange. Instead, what they found were well-planned streets laid out in grids, strong brick houses, public wells, drainage systems that would honestly impress some modern neighborhoods. It almost looked like a civilization that cared more about city planning than showing off. And then there was the writing. Small seals began to appear during excavations, little carved stones often square. On them were animals, bulls, elephants, strange unicorn-like creatures, and above them, tiny symbols, a script, a real writing system. But no one could read it. No long texts were found. No helpful bilingual translation like the Rosetta Stone that unlocked Egyptian. Hieroglyphs, just short inscriptions, quiet, compact, mysterious. Imagine discovering a library where every book is written in a language no one understands. That is what it felt like. So here we have a civilization as old as Egypt, as advanced as Mesopotamia, spreading across a vast region, but with no known kings, no readable writing, no giant monuments shouting their achievements. It is almost like they built their cities, lived their lives, and then gently stepped off the stage of history without leaving a forwarding address. Over time, rivers changed course. Floods came and went. Trade routes shifted. The cities slowly declined, and eventually they were abandoned. Dust covered the streets. Earth swallowed the walls. Silence settled in. For nearly 2,000 years, the world moved on. Empires rose and fell. Religions spread. New languages were born. And beneath the soil, the brick streets of Mohenjo-daro waited patiently. There is something peaceful about that. No dramatic final battle. No fiery destruction layer everywhere. Just a slow fading. A civilization that once bustled with life. Children playing in courtyards. Merchants counting goods. Potters shaping clay became a quiet mound under the sun. And then one day, railway workers looking for building material unknowingly brushed against the edge of a lost world. Sometimes history does not shout. Sometimes it whispers. The Indus Valley Civilization whispers through its bricks, through its drains, through its silent seals covered in unreadable signs. It tells us gently that human beings were building organized cities, trading across long distances, and creating complex societies far earlier than many once believed. And yet the more we learn, the more questions appear. Who led these cities? What language did they speak? What stories did they tell their children at night? What did those symbols really say? For now, the ruins remain still. The mist still rises in the early morning. The baked bricks still hold their shape. The streets still stretch forward, straight and calm, waiting. In the next chapter, we will walk those streets more closely. We will see how these cities were designed, how water flowed through them, how daily life may have felt inside those brick walls. But for now, rest in this thought. 4,000 years ago, under a sky not so different from ours, people built cities of order and care. And even after being buried in silence, they were never truly gone. Chapter 2. The Design of a Perfect Ancient City. Urban Planning and Daily Structure. If you could float above Mohenjo-daro like a quiet bird at sunrise, the first thing you would notice is order, not chaos, not tangled alleys, not random huts placed wherever someone felt like building, but straight lines. The streets run in a grid pattern, north to south, east to west. They cross each other almost at right angles, like someone sat down with a ruler and said, "Yes, let's keep this neat." This was not common in the ancient world. Many early cities grew slowly and organically. A house here, a shop there, a path that bends because a goat refused to move. But here there was planning. Careful planning. Major streets were wide enough for carts to pass. Smaller lanes branched off into neighborhoods. It feels intentional, calm, thought through. And then there are the bricks. The bricks are almost perfectly standardized. Same shape, same ratio, over and over again. Archaeologists have measured them. They follow a consistent proportion, usually 1.24, which means someone set a rule. Someone said, "This is the brick size," and everyone agreed. That alone tells us something powerful. This society shared standards. It worked together. It valued consistency, and these were not soft mud bricks. Many were baked in kilns, fired hard, built to last. Clearly, they did not plan to move anytime soon. Now let's talk about something that makes modern city planners slightly emotional. Drainage. Yes, we are going to admire ancient plumbing. Under the streets of Mohenjo-daro ran covered drains, properly constructed, with brick lining. Some even had inspection holes so they could be cleaned. That means maintenance. That means civic care. Many houses had their own small bathing areas. Water from these rooms flowed into the covered drains along the streets. Let that sink in for a second. 4,000 years ago, people were designing homes with built-in drainage, systems connected to citywide networks. Some modern neighborhoods are still figuring this out. Nearly every house had access to water. Public wells were placed throughout the city. Some homes even had private wells inside courtyards. Water was not a luxury for a few. It was built into the structure of the city. This suggests something peaceful, something practical. This was not a city built only to impress visitors. It was built to function. And at the center of Mohenjo-daro sits one of its most famous structures, the Great Bath. It is a large rectangular pool, carefully lined with bricks and sealed with bitumen to prevent leaks. Wide steps lead down into the water. It looks important, but not flashy. There are no giant statues around it, no carved scenes of kings celebrating victory. Just solid brickwork and thoughtful design. Many scholars believe it was used for ritual bathing, cleansing before ceremonies, maybe community gatherings, maybe something spiritual. Water seems to have mattered deeply to them. And here is something interesting. Despite all this impressive planning, archaeologists have not found a clear palace. No giant royal complex towering over the rest of the city. No throne room. No massive temple structure dominating the skyline. If you look at ancient Egypt, you see pyramids and grand temples. If you look at Mesopotamia, you see ziggurats rising high. But here, nothing like that. Which makes historians pause. If there was no obvious palace, who ruled? If there was no massive temple, who led religious life? Some scholars suggest that power may have been decentralized. Perhaps decisions were made by councils, or local leaders, or merchant groups. It may have been a society driven more by trade and organization than by dramatic kings. A merchant-driven society, a civilization where trade networks and shared standards mattered more than royal glory. It is almost refreshing. Instead of, look at my giant statue, the Indus cities seem to say, look at our drainage system. And honestly, that might be more useful. Now let's step away from the bricks and imagine the people. Because cities are not just walls and streets. They are mornings and evenings. Sounds and smells. Picture dawn. The sky is soft pink. Smoke rises from small ovens. Bakers are already awake, grinding grain, mixing dough, shaping flatbread. The smell drifts into the street. A potter sits cross-legged near his wheel. The clay is cool and smooth under his hands. He spins the wheel and shapes a jar in steady rhythm, round and balanced, practical, beautiful in its simplicity. In another home, a woman draws water from a well in the courtyard. The rope creaks gently. The bucket rises dripping. Children run down the narrow side lanes. Their laughter echoes lightly between brick walls. Maybe they carry small clay toys. Archaeologists have found tiny carts with wheels, little animal figurines. Evidence that play existed here, too. Life feels organized, not rushed, not chaotic. The streets guide movement. The drains carry away waste quietly beneath your feet. Wells offer fresh water nearby. This is a city built for daily life, not just for ceremony, not just for kings, for people. And that may be the most beautiful part. When we look at these ruins today, we do not see giant statues pointing at the sky. We see straight streets, uniform bricks, carefully laid drains, wells placed with care. We see signs of cooperation, of shared systems, of a society that valued order and cleanliness and water access for many, not just a few. Of course, we still do not know everything. We do not know exactly how they governed themselves. We do not know what titles their leaders held. We do not know what words they used to describe their city. But we can see the results. The layout speaks. The bricks speak. The drains speak. They tell us this was not an accidental settlement. It was designed, thoughtfully, calmly, with care. And maybe that is why walking through Mohenjo-daro today feels strangely peaceful. Even in ruin, the order remains. The streets still cross at right angles. The wells still stand in their places. The great bath still rests quietly under the open sky. It is the skeleton of a city that once breathed with steady rhythm. In the next chapter, we will follow the goods that moved through these streets, beads, textiles, seals. We will travel beyond the city, walls, and see how this quiet civilization connected with the wider ancient world. Because these perfectly planned streets were not isolated. They were part of something much larger, a network that stretched far beyond the Indus River. Chapter 3. Trade across the ancient world. Commerce and global connections. If you stand in the quiet streets of Mohenjo-daro and listen carefully, you might almost hear it. Not the sound of war drums, not marching armies, but carts rolling slowly over brick roads, wooden wheels turning, traders speaking in low voices, goods being counted. Because this civilization was not just building cities, it was connecting worlds. One of the most surprising discoveries archaeologists made was this. Small Indus Valley seals were found far away in Mesopotamia. These seals are usually square, carved from stone. On them you see animals, bulls, elephants, and that famous unicorn-like figure. Above the animals are tiny symbols from the Indus script. When similar seals turned up in Mesopotamian cities, historians paused. Mesopotamia is far from the Indus Valley, hundreds of miles away. So how did they get there? Trade. Long-distance trade. 4,000 years ago, merchants from the Indus Valley were not just trading with their neighbors. They were reaching Persia, Mesopotamia, the Arabian Peninsula. This was not a small network. It was international. In Mesopotamian records, there are mentions of a distant land called Meluha. Many scholars believe this refers to the Indus region. Imagine that for a moment. While ancient scribes in Mesopotamia were pressing cuneiform into clay tablets, they were writing about merchants from a faraway land, possibly the Indus Valley. That means ships were sailing, caravans were walking, agreements were being made. Now let us travel south to a special place along the coast of present-day Gujarat, India. This is Lothal. Lothal may have been one of the world's earliest dockyards. Archaeologists uncovered a large rectangular basin near the settlement. It appears to have been connected to ancient waterways. Many believe ships once anchored here. Picture small wooden boats rocking gently in tidal water, sailors loading cargo, ropes creaking, seabirds circling overhead. This was not an isolated farming village. This was a port. From here, goods could travel along the Arabian Sea. They could move west toward Mesopotamia, south toward the Arabian Peninsula, north along river routes. And what were they trading? Quite a lot. Beads were one of their specialties. Beautiful beads made from carnelian, agate, and other stones, polished carefully, drilled with precision. Indus craftsmen were very skilled. Some beads found in Mesopotamia have been traced back to Indus workshops. They also likely traded cotton textiles. In fact, the Indus people may have been among the first in the world to grow and weave cotton. Imagine soft cotton cloth being folded and packed into bundles, lightweight, practical, valuable. In a hot desert climate, cotton would have been very welcome. Copper tools were another trade item. Tools for farming, tools for crafting, tools for daily life. Precious stones moved through their networks too. Lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, carnelian from Gujarat, shells from coastal areas. The Indus cities were like hubs in a web of exchange. And here is something that shows just how organized this was. Standardized weights and measures. Archaeologists have found small stone weights in very precise sizes. They follow a consistent system across different cities. This means merchants in one city could trust the measurements used in another. No guessing. No, my rock is heavier than your rock. Trade needs trust, and trust needs standards. So when a merchant weighed beads or copper, both sides likely understood the value clearly. That suggests organized commerce, shared systems, maybe even regulations. Now imagine a caravan leaving an Indus city. The sun is low. The air is cool. Camels or oxen carry bundles of goods, beads wrapped in cloth, jars sealed tight, cotton folded neatly. The caravan moves slowly across dusty paths, across plains, along riverbanks, into dry lands where the horizon stretches wide. Travel was not fast. It was patient. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. At night, traders may have sat around small fires, sharing food, watching stars, listening to desert winds. There is something peaceful about that rhythm. Trade is not loud like war. It is steady. It builds relationships. And when we look at the Indus Valley Civilization, we do not see signs of massive armies. We do not see strong evidence of large standing military forces. There are no huge weapon stockpiles, no dramatic fortresses built only for war. That does not mean they had no conflict at all. Every society faces tension. But the archaeological record suggests they were traders first. Connectors, organizers. Instead of expanding through conquest, they expanded through exchange. Instead of sending soldiers, they sent merchants. Instead of building monuments to kings, they built dockyards and drainage systems. It feels like a different kind of power. A quiet power, the power of networks, the power of trust, the power of agreed weights and shared routes. When Mesopotamian traders held an Indus seal in their hands, they were touching something from far away, something carefully made, something part of a system that worked. And back in the Indus cities, merchants likely handled goods from distant lands, exotic stones, strange stories, new ideas. These cities were not isolated bricks in a forgotten valley. They were connected, linked by river and sea and sand, and perhaps that is why their streets were so orderly, their standards so consistent. Because when you trade across the ancient world, you must be reliable, you must be clear, you must be organized. The Indus Valley Civilization seems to have understood that deeply. So as we leave this chapter, imagine ships anchored at Lothal, caravans crossing deserts, seals pressed into clay to mark ownership. Imagine a network stretching from the Indus River to Mesopotamia and beyond, not through conquest, but through cooperation. In the next chapter, we will return to those small seals, the ones covered in symbols no one can read. Because while their trade networks reached far across the ancient world, their own written voice remains one of history's greatest mysteries. Chapter 4. The Script No One Can Read. Writing and the Great Mystery. Now we come to the quietest mystery of all. Not a broken wall, not a missing palace, but a voice that speaks, and yet we cannot understand a single word. Across the cities of the Indus Valley, archaeologists found small objects. Most of them fit in the palm of your hand. Square seals made of stone, carefully carved. On them are tiny symbols. Above carved animals sit short lines of script, clean, precise, balanced. This is what we call the Indus script. It looks simple at first glance, but the more you look, the stranger it feels. There are around 400 different symbols that have been identified. Some look like simple shapes, lines, loops, boxes, fish-like forms, trident shapes, little comb patterns. Others look more complex, but here is the first unusual thing. The inscriptions are short. Very short. Most seals have only 5 to 7 symbols. Some have just 3 or 4. A few have a bit more. But no long paragraphs, no grand epics carved into stone walls. No, I am King so-and-so, and here is my 20-page speech. Just brief markings, compact, careful, quiet. For over 100 years, scholars have tried to decode this script. Since the 1920s, when the first seals were uncovered at Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, experts from all over the world have studied these symbols. They have compared patterns, counted frequency, looked for repetition. Some believe it may represent a Dravidian language. Others suggest something entirely different. There are debates, conferences, papers written with very serious titles. And yet, no one has cracked it. Now let us gently compare this to ancient Egypt. Egyptian hieroglyphs were once a mystery too. For centuries, people saw the symbols but did not know how to read them. Then the Rosetta Stone was discovered. The Rosetta Stone had the same text written in 3 scripts. One of them was Greek, which scholars could read. By comparing them, they slowly unlocked hieroglyphs. It was like finding a bilingual dictionary carved into rock. The Indus Valley Civilization has no Rosetta Stone, no helpful translation guide, no long bilingual text, just short inscriptions, repeated across thousands of seals and small tablets. That makes things very difficult. Another challenge is this. We do not even know for certain what language the script represents. Is it an early form of a language still spoken today? Is it something completely lost? Is it even a full writing system or something more symbolic? Some scholars have even debated whether it encodes full speech at all. But most agree it likely does represent language. It shows patterns, structure, repetition in ways that look intentional. And then there are the animals. The seals often show a central figure, a bull with large curved horns, an elephant, a rhinoceros, a tiger, and most famously, a strange unicorn-like creature. This unicorn does not look like the fairy tale kind with flowing mane. It looks strong, almost serious, standing calmly before what appears to be a ritual stand. Why this creature appears so often, we do not know. Was it a symbol of a clan, a merchant group, a deity, or just a very popular logo? Above these animals sit the symbols, short lines of signs. So what were they for? Let us consider gently. Were they trademarkers? Stamps used to mark goods, showing ownership or origin? If a merchant packed a crate of beads, perhaps he pressed his seal into clay to show it belonged to him. Were they names of merchants? Like an ancient business card? Or maybe religious messages, short sacred phrases, blessings before trade? Perhaps they were administrative records, inventory codes, tax notes. We do not know. And that is what makes this mystery so powerful. Imagine holding one of these seals in your hand. It is smooth, cool stone. The carving is delicate. You can feel the ridges of each symbol with your finger. You know it meant something very specific to the person who used it. They could read it. They understood it instantly. To them, it was not mysterious at all. It was normal, daily, practical. And now, 4,000 years later, we stare at the same symbols and feel like we are looking at a locked door. We see the door clearly. We just do not have the key. There is something almost poetic about that. We are looking at a civilization that speaks. It speaks through its drains and bricks, through its trade routes, through its careful planning. But most directly, it speaks through its script. And we cannot understand it. It is like listening to someone whisper across a vast distance of time. You hear the rhythm. You see the movement of their lips. But the words dissolve before reaching you. Scholars continue to study it. New technologies scan seals in high detail. Computers analyze symbol frequency. Patterns are compared again and again. Maybe one day someone will find a breakthrough, a new artifact, a longer text, a bilingual clue. Maybe the key is still buried somewhere under sand and stone. Until then, the script remains one of the greatest puzzles of the ancient world. Short, elegant, unreadable, and strangely beautiful. In the next chapter, we will move from writing to belief, from symbols to ritual. We will explore what these people may have believed about life, nature, and the unseen world. Because even if we cannot read their words, we can still look at the objects they left behind. And sometimes objects tell stories in ways that language cannot. Chapter 5. Beliefs, Rituals, and Everyday Spiritual Life. Warm, quiet, human moments. So far we have walked their streets. We have watched their merchants trade. We have stared at their unreadable script. Now let us step inside their homes, because religion is not only about big temples and tall statues. Sometimes it lives in small rooms, in clay figures, in evening habits. When archaeologists began digging through the cities of the Indus Valley, they did not find massive temples rising above everything else. No giant pyramid, no towering stone god watching the skyline. Instead, they found something smaller, more personal. Terracotta figurines. These small clay figures often show a female form. Wide hips, decorative headpieces, detailed jewelry pressed into soft clay before firing. Some scholars call them mother goddess figures. Maybe they represented fertility, protection, the earth itself. Or maybe they were household charms, small blessings placed in corners of rooms. We cannot be sure, but we can imagine someone shaping the clay carefully with their fingers, pressing details into it, letting it dry, placing it somewhere safe, not in a giant temple, but in a home. Then there is one of the most famous artifacts from the Indus Valley, a tiny carved seal that has caused big discussions. This is often called the Pashupati seal. On it you see a seated figure. The figure appears to have horns. It sits in a cross-legged posture. Around it are animals, maybe elephants, tigers, buffalo, deer. Some scholars believe this could be an early form of a deity linked to Shiva in later Hindu tradition. The figure's posture looks meditative, calm, centered. But again, we do not know for certain. It might represent a god of animals, a nature spirit, a symbol of balance, or something entirely different. The truth is, we are looking through a fog of time, and yet even in the fog we can see something gentle. Notice what is missing again. No massive stone temple has been clearly identified in these cities. No huge sanctuary with grand staircases and carved columns. That is unusual. In many ancient civilizations, religion was displayed loudly and publicly. Here it feels quieter. We do have strong evidence of ritual bathing, especially when we think about the Great Bath at Mohenjo-daro. Water seems to have mattered deeply. Cleanliness, purity, renewal. Imagine stepping down those brick steps into cool water. The surface calm. The walls carefully sealed so not a drop escapes. Maybe it was part of a ceremony. Maybe part of a seasonal ritual. Maybe preparation before prayer. It suggests something important. Spirituality connected to water. Connected to cleansing. And not only in public spaces. Many homes had bathing areas with drainage. Water was part of daily life. Perhaps spiritual life was woven into routine. Wash, work, trade, eat, rest. And speaking of daily life, let us not forget something very human. Toys. Archaeologists found small wheeled carts made of clay. Tiny animals with movable heads. Little dice carved from stone or terracotta. Dice. Which means games. Which means laughter. Which means someone, somewhere, probably said, no, you moved that piece wrong. 4,000 years ago, children likely rolled those carts along brick floors, pretended to be traders, or farmers, or something entirely made up. These toys remind us that this civilization was not just drains and trade routes. It was bedtime stories. It was play. It was family. Now picture the evening. The sun lowers slowly over the Indus River. The air cools. Smoke from cooking fires drifts gently upward. Inside a brick house, an oil lamp flickers softly. Its flame dances against the wall. A family gathers. Someone pours water into a small basin. Hands are washed, feet cleaned. Dust of the day rinsed away. Maybe a short prayer is whispered. Maybe a small clay figurine rests nearby on a shelf. The room smells of warm bread and clay. Outside, the city grows quieter. Footsteps fade. Carts stop rolling. The wells creak less often. It does not feel like a loud religion. It feels personal, domestic, less about giant monuments and more about daily rhythm, less about showing power and more about maintaining balance. There is something comforting about that. Their spirituality may have lived in small gestures, in washing before sleep, in lighting a lamp at dusk, in shaping clay into meaningful forms. It may have been woven into daily routine rather than separated into grand ceremony. We often imagine ancient religion as dramatic and overwhelming, huge statues, loud chants, fire and spectacle. But the Indus Valley suggests another possibility, a quieter faith, one that sits cross-legged among animals, one that values water and cleanliness, one that lives in clay figurines placed gently in the corner of a room. We do not have long prayers carved in stone. We do not have sacred books preserved from their libraries, but we have these small hints. And sometimes small hints feel more intimate than grand monuments, because they show us ordinary life. And ordinary life is where belief truly lives. In the next chapter, we will explore something more uncertain, the slow fading of these cities. The decline that came not with dramatic invasion, but with change. But for now, let us sit in the soft glow of that evening lamp. In a brick house, in a quiet city, in a civilization that may have found the sacred not in height and noise, but in calm routine, and in the simple act of washing the day away before sleep. Chapter 6. The Sudden Decline. Climate, change, and abandonment. For many ancient civilizations, the ending is loud. There are burn layers, broken walls, arrowheads, skeletons frozen in dramatic poses. Historians get a clear picture. Something big happened. But when we look at the Indus Valley Civilization, the ending feels different, quieter. Around 1900 BCE, something began to change. The great cities, Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, and many others, started to decline. Not overnight, not in a single dramatic moment. Slowly. The bricks were still there. The drains still ran. The wells still stood. But over time, buildings were not repaired as carefully. streets filled with debris. Some neighborhoods were abandoned. It feels less like a sudden fall and more like a long sigh. So what happened? Let us walk gently through the theories. One idea is climate change. 4,000 years ago, the climate of the region may have shifted. Monsoon patterns could have weakened. Rain may have become less reliable. Rivers depend on rain. Crops depend on rivers. If rainfall slowly decreased over decades, farming would become harder, harvests smaller, surpluses thinner. A city can survive many things, but it cannot survive without food. Another major theory involves rivers themselves. The Indus River still flows today, but in ancient times, other rivers also played important roles. One of them is often called the Ghaggar-Hakra River. Today, parts of that river system are dry, just dusty channels cutting through the land. Some scholars believe that tectonic shifts or long-term climate changes caused this river to dry up or change course. If a river that once fed farms and cities slowly moved away, people would have to move too. You cannot argue with a river. Well, you can try, but the river usually wins. There is also the question of trade. Earlier, we saw how connected the Indus cities were. Trade routes reached Persia, Mesopotamia, the Arabian Peninsula. But trade depends on stability. If other regions faced political problems or economic decline, long-distance trade might shrink. Fewer ships, fewer caravans, less exchange. Without strong trade networks, cities that depended on commerce would feel the pressure. Over time, smaller towns might survive better than large urban centers. Then there is migration. Archaeological evidence suggests that people may have gradually moved eastward, toward the Ganges Plain, not in panic, not in chaos, but in search of better farmland, more reliable water, new opportunity. Instead of one dramatic collapse, it may have been a slow shift of population, a gradual relocation. And here is something very important. There is no clear evidence of a massive invasion destroying the cities. Older theories once suggested that invading groups swept in and brought violent collapse. But modern archaeology does not strongly support that idea. There are no widespread burn layers across all cities, no consistent signs of violent destruction, no single moment where everything ends in flames. Instead, we see change, gradual change. Some neighborhoods become less organized. Building quality declines. Public works are not maintained as carefully. It is like watching a once busy town slowly lose population. Shops close. Streets grow quieter. Repairs are delayed. Not because of one big disaster, but because the world around it shifts. It is easy to imagine collapse as dramatic, but sometimes history fades softly. Picture Mohenjo-daro in its later years. The Great Bath still stands, but maybe fewer people gather there. The streets still run straight, but some houses are empty. A well that once served many families now serves only a few. Children still play. Merchants still trade. Life continues, just smaller. Eventually, more people leave. They carry their tools, their knowledge, their habits, their stories. They move east. And here is the important reflection. The civilization may have declined, but the people did not vanish. They did not disappear into thin air. They adapted. They shifted. They became part of new communities, new cultures, new regions. Culture is not a building that falls. It is a river. It flows. It changes shape. It takes on new forms. So when we say the Indus Valley Civilization declined around 1900 BCE, we should not imagine a dramatic explosion. We should imagine a slow turning of seasons. Less rain. A shifting river. Trade routes thinning. Families deciding it is time to move. Bricks left behind. Drains growing quiet. Wind moving through empty streets. There is a soft melancholy in that image. But there is also something natural. Cities rise, cities fall. Rivers change course. People adapt. The Indus Valley Civilization may not have ended with a shout. It may have ended with footsteps. Footsteps heading east, carrying memory, carrying skill, carrying tradition. In the final chapter, we will reflect on what remains, on how archaeologists today continue to uncover new clues, on how this quiet civilization still shapes our understanding of the ancient world, because even though its cities grew silent, its story is far from over. Chapter 7, What Still Remains, Legacy and Ongoing Mystery. If you visit the ruins today, you will not hear the noise of ancient markets. You will hear wind, soft wind moving across brick walls that have stood for 4,000 years. But the story is not finished, not even close. Archaeologists are still digging. Every decade, new discoveries appear. A new settlement site, a new seal, a new clue about trade routes, a new well uncovered under layers of soil. The Indus Valley Civilization is not frozen in time. It keeps revealing small pieces of itself, like a quiet storyteller who shares one sentence at a time. Technology has changed how we study the past. Drones map ancient city layouts from above. Satellite images reveal old river channels hidden beneath sand. Tiny chemical tests tell us where stones and metals originally came from. And then there is DNA. In recent years, genetic studies of ancient remains have started to reshape our understanding of early South Asian populations. DNA does not tell us stories in words, but it tells us about movement, about ancestry, about connections. It shows that the people of the Indus Valley were not isolated. They were part of a complex web of populations in ancient South Asia. Some researchers believe there may be cultural links between the Indus civilization and later traditions in the region. Certain symbols, ritual bathing practices, patterns of settlement, even ideas about purity and water. But we must be gentle here. History is not a straight line. It is more like a braided river. Some streams connect, some split, some join again later. What seems clear is this: the Indus Valley Civilization did not vanish into emptiness. It transformed. When cities declined, people moved. When rivers shifted, communities adapted. Skills continued. Pottery techniques, craft traditions, agricultural knowledge. Culture travels with people. You can abandon a brick house. You cannot abandon memory so easily. And so the legacy of the Indus Valley may not stand in tall monuments. It may live in quieter ways, in farming patterns, in trade instincts, in spiritual habits linked to water and cleanliness, in symbols that still echo faintly across time. And then, of course, there is the script, the silent script. It remains unread. Thousands of seals sit in museums and collections around the world, small, square, covered in careful symbols. Each one is a message sent forward through time, and we are still trying to answer it. Imagine if one day someone finds the key, a longer text, a bilingual inscription, a breakthrough pattern no one noticed before. Suddenly, the quiet would speak. We might learn names. We might learn stories. We might hear the voices of merchants, priests, or ordinary citizens. Until then, the mystery remains part of the beauty. There is something humbling about that. In a world where we often expect quick answers, the Indus Valley reminds us that some stories take patience. 4,000 years of patience. As the sun begins to set over the Indus River, the light turns golden. The river flows slowly, just as it did long ago. Wind moves across the ruins of Mohenjo-daro, across Harappa, across places where children once ran and traders once counted goods. The bricks glow softly in the fading light. No kings carved into mountains. No giant statues pointing to the sky. Just quiet walls, straight streets, covered drains, wells still standing, and small seals, always the seals, still waiting. Civilizations often leave behind noise, battles, monuments, grand speeches. The Indus Valley left behind something different. Order, craft, trade networks, careful planning, and a script that refuses to explain itself. Maybe that is part of its power. It does not demand attention. It invites curiosity. It reminds us that history is not only about the loud and dramatic. Sometimes the most advanced societies are also the most balanced. Sometimes greatness looks like clean water in every home. Sometimes influence spreads through trade, not war. And sometimes disappearance is not an ending. It is a transformation. As we close this journey, picture the sun dipping below the horizon, the sky turning deep orange, then purple. The Indus River keeps flowing. The wind keeps moving. The bricks remain steady. And somewhere in a museum drawer or buried under sand, a small seal rests quietly. Its symbols are sharp. Its message clear to someone. Just not yet to us. They built cities of brick, traded across oceans, and left behind a script that still whispers across 4,000 years. And maybe one day, we will finally hear what it has been trying to say.